Diddy has introduced a bold new motion, one that Justin, Quincy, and Christian are all hoping could finally tip the scales. If you haven't been following, Diddy is currently navigating a high-stakes legal battle. To put it simply, this is a risky move. Markagilio Yana has stepped up, clocking in and taking action on Diddy's behalf. This legal gamble carries significant risks, but could also deliver a massive payoff. Let's break it all down. If you're not up to speed, here's the situation. A letter was recently submitted to the court. Diddy claims that investigators in Virginia are leaking evidence to federal authorities. Now, let me be clear. While this could be true, I personally don't think it holds much weight. It seems more like Diddy is throwing out red herrings, possibly to buy himself more time. It appears the feds have caught on, though, and they've fired back by submitting their own response to the court. We're about to break it all down, decode what it means, and get to the bottom of it. For context, this latest letter was filed by the prosecution. Let's dive in. Let me break down what's happening here. The prosecution is pushing for earlier pretrial disclosures, while Diddy's team argues that the current timeline is already tight but sufficient. This is where things get interesting, because the stakes are incredibly high. At the heart of this battle is the delicate balance between Diddy's right to a speedy trial and the prosecution's need to adequately prepare. In their motion, the government is requesting to move deadlines up by 2 weeks, arguing that the current schedule doesn't allow enough time for proper preparation. They claim this adjustment would help avoid inefficiencies in handling pretrial motions. Now here's the twist. The prosecution seems to be playing hardball. However, the defense believes the prosecution may actually be overwhelmed by the complexity and scope of the case. Diddy's team is holding firm, opposing any timeline changes. They're citing a heavy workload and the need to suppress evidence they argue was obtained through unlawful searches. This brings us back to the allegations of unlawful searches, claims involving investigators in Virginia and potential leaks. To me, this all feels like a strategic move, a stalling tactic to run out the clock. But why? Let's dig deeper into that question. Let's dive back into this. Diddy's legal team is arguing that early trial disclosures won't harm the government and are essential for ensuring a fair trial. Specifically, they claim the prosecution hasn't clarified who they view as victims, leaving the defense unable to prepare effectively. Markagilio Yana is presenting himself as the underdog here, and it's becoming clear they may already be laying the groundwork for an appeal if things don't go their way. On a lighter note, maybe Mark's just angling for another summer beach house off the coast of France, because an appeal certainly seems to be in the works. Now, the central issue here revolves around something called an enterprise letter. This document outlines the racketeering charges and is critical to the case. The prosecution is requesting until March 7th to align their disclosures with rulings on pre-trial motions. Why is this significant? Because these motions determine which pieces of evidence can actually be used in court. If the prosecution builds their case on evidence that ends up being dismissed, it could waste significant time, money, and effort. The defense, however, is pushing back. They're insisting on sticking to the February 1st, 2025 deadline, arguing they need adequate time for trial preparation. Additionally, they're demanding earlier disclosures of expert witnesses. This has sparked a debate between simultaneous versus staggered disclosures. The prosecution favors staggered disclosures for efficiency, arguing that they'll provide information as it becomes relevant. The defense, on the other hand, wants everything disclosed as soon as it's discovered, viewing this as a way to short-circuit the government's case. At the core of this battle is a classic legal power play. The defense accuses the prosecution of withholding information, claiming it undermines the fairness of the trial. But there's a twist here. The prosecution points out the irony of Diddy's team pushing for a speedy trial while simultaneously demanding extended preparation timelines. This is legal chess at its finest, and the judge will need to see through the strategic maneuvering on both sides. As for who the victims are, maybe someone should clue Markagilio in. It's likely anyone Diddy worked with, interacted with, or, as a humorous aside, handed a Diet Welch's grape soda to. The defense is raising concerns about potential surprise evidence or mystery witnesses. But here's the crux of the issue. The prosecution is essentially telling the court, Your Honor, Diddy is the one pushing for a faster timeline, yet now they want to move deadlines up to suit their rush without actually speeding up their own preparation. This raises an important question. Is the defense using this timeline as a stalling tactic? I believe so. They seem to be banking on the prosecution becoming overburdened, hoping that the tight schedule will prevent them from building a strong case. By flooding the prosecution with pretrial motions, the defense aims to slow them down, knowing the case's complexity already presents a significant challenge. At the same time, it's worth considering that the prosecution might be strategically withholding information. The power dynamics at play here, combined with the aggressive deadlines, say a lot about the tactics being used. Now, let's revisit the prosecution's perspective. They argue that the current schedule doesn't provide enough time to properly address critical pretrial motions ahead of the trial set for May 5th. They're concerned that unresolved motions, like challenges to evidence or charges, could disrupt their trial preparation. These motions play a crucial role in shaping the trial's scope, including determining what evidence and charges will ultimately be admissible. Without early resolution, the prosecution risks wasting valuable time and resources preparing for issues that might later be excluded or altered by court rulings. The trial disclosures, which everyone is debating, involve evidence details, witness lists, and expert notices. The prosecution argues they shouldn't have to submit this information until pretrial motions are resolved, as these rulings could significantly impact what they're allowed to present in court. Furthermore, the prosecution emphasizes that the timeline proposed by Diddy's team deviates from the norm in this district, where pretrial schedules are typically much shorter. Resolving motions earlier would give the prosecution a strategic advantage, allowing them to refine their case and avoid inefficiencies. Remember, the law promises both speediness and efficiency in the judicial process. The prosecution's concern is that committing to detailed trial disclosures too early could lead to wasted efforts on evidence or arguments that might later be deemed inadmissible. Let's break this down. The prosecution is feeling the pressure with the May 5th, 2025 trial date looming. They argue that the tight timeline is problematic, especially since evidence sharing, discovery, was only recently completed. Meanwhile, Diddy's team is pushing back hard against any timeline changes, claiming they're overwhelmed by the sheer volume of evidence. Here's the catch. Diddy's team demanded this mountain of evidence, yet now they're arguing they don't have enough time to process it. They insist that rushing the timeline will hinder their ability to prepare critical motions, like challenging evidence obtained through search warrants. They also claim early trial disclosures won't harm the prosecution, but are necessary for fairness. But let's be real, Diddy's legal team appears to be playing a risky game. They're hoping to overwhelm the prosecution and exploit any weaknesses in their preparation. This strategy hinges on stalling and creating pressure through pretrial motions, but it's a delicate balance. One of the key issues is that Diddy claims he still doesn't fully understand the prosecution's case, including the identity of victims and how the evidence will be used. The Enterprise letter, which outlines the racketeering charges, could clarify this, but it's tied up in the current pretrial motions. Now, what's the risk here? Without enough time, Diddy's motions might lack depth, miss critical points, or fail to address key issues. A rushed defense could also lose leverage to negotiate favorable plea deals or get charges dropped. And if the defense argues they were denied adequate preparation time, it could set the stage for an appeal. But appeals are notoriously difficult and time-consuming. At the end of the day, this is a high-stakes legal chess match. Mark Agnifilo, Diddy's lawyer, is doing what he's paid to do, throwing everything, including the kitchen sink at this case. But it's a risky strategy, and it's unclear whether it will pay off. As for the judge's ruling, that's going to set the tone for how many of the pending indictments against Diddy will move forward. Legal battles are like a game of chess, or maybe even musical chairs. Every motion could change the game, and when the music stops, someone could find themselves without a seat. So what do you think? Is this strategy a smart gamble or a desperate move? Let me know in the comments.